Hello, everyone. We got a very special guest, one of my favorite people I've ever done podcasts with. And let's be honest, he tolerates me for this. So to paraphrase Kevin Durant, he's the real MVP. So let's have him introduce himself.
Hey, I appreciate it, Eric. I love being on with you. I'm Calvin Wetzel. I uh I I don't know what you want me to say. Freelance basketball journalist, cover basketball with her hoop stats, CBS Sports, a bunch of different places throughout the last several years. And I live in Illinois, so I live in Big Ten territory, just like Eric does. So I love following the league and excited to break it down.
Yeah, he's being modest. He's the betting master. If you need any betting tips, go to him. Don't go to me. I'm not great with money to begin with, so I don't bet it. But we listen to his. He has a great podcast. Listen to him. He's on her hoop stats. You can find Calvin everywhere, so he will cover all levels of basketball.
That's right. I love ball. That's all it is. That's all there is to it.
And in a much more adult version than not me. So we will listen to Calvin because if you listen to me, you're going to get unfiltered and off the rails. So Calvin will keep it on the rails tonight. But as he mentioned,
Yeah.
it's almost
Well,
that time. Big Ten season. One of my favorite teams are coming back. One of my favorite players are coming back. She's right here, Brown Mamba. But we'll talk about the whole conference because there happens to be a couple of good players. We might know one who put a triple double up outdoors like a freak. So as we were talking about, but let's start right there. Calvin, is this basically just Caitlin Clark's conference and we're all just living in it, or kind of what are you expecting from Caitlin Clark's senior year? Possible senior
yeah.
year.
Well, right. Yeah. Who knows? We should throw that in there. But I mean, could be your first of two senior years. Maybe not. It's obviously her award to lose if you're talking about the player of the year. She's only been getting better every year, and she already came in elite as a freshman. So what we saw last year, especially in the tournament, that run to knock off South Carolina, one of my favorite basketball games, and not like it's not like, oh, I hate South Carolina or anything, but just like what she was able to do and what I was able to do in the Final Four against South Carolina, a historically good team, was just so fun to watch from an X's and O's basketball junkie standpoint. So obviously they didn't win a national championship, but I still think they have a lot of momentum coming into this year. We'll get to this in a little bit. They didn't add any transfers. I guess I don't know if they felt like they didn't need to or didn't get anyone. But Caitlin Clark, it's obviously her team, it's her league. And in terms of the player of the year, unless something crazy happens, everyone's kind of playing for second.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much could engrave it right now, and then just if you need to take the little plaque off if an injury or for some reason someone goes nuts, which I don't, you would almost have to average triple double Alyssa Thomas level to knock off Caitlin Clark at that level. But I have a couple that we talked about maybe playing for second place. I'll start with a few. I think the biggest contenders to Caitlin Clark, and that's Mackenzie Holmes at Indiana and Cody McMahon at Ohio State. I also would like to say random. Little surprised Cody McMahon wasn't at Big Ten Media Day. The Big Ten Freshman of the Year, probably maybe one of the most difficult players to stop in the Big Ten, and they didn't have her there. I was a little surprised. But she, as we saw, was a force. Her game against UConn last year just took her to another level. That spin move, you can't stop it. And also, side note, I want to know who her dentist is. Girl has the whitest teeth I have ever seen a day in my life. I was at the Big Ten tournament. Her, on the floor, me 3 rows up. Her teeth were, shining. Cody, throw the name of the dentist out because those are excellent teeth.
This is the analysis people follow you for, Eric. The true deep dive stuff. No, you nailed it though. I think there's honestly sort of a top tier, and Caitlin's in her own tier, but then I think you kind of have a big three, really, as well. And those are the other two that I obviously have down as well as Mackenzie Holmes, who in a normal year, I think you would be talking about Mackenzie Holmes as at the very worst a strong candidate, at best the front runner for player of the year if she didn't play with one of the better college players that we've really ever seen last few decades in her same class or a year off. But what she was able to do last year, obviously on that team, and especially when they lost Grace Berger for a couple months, best post scorer in the country by far. And this is what I want to know, by the way, about Mackenzie Holmes and some of these other players too. So I was looking at the first team All Big Ten. They have the media first team and the coaches first team. and there's 10 players on this. Some leagues do 5, Big Ten does 10. So there are 10 players on the media all Big Ten first team. Obviously, she was on it. Caitlin Clark was on it. Cody McMahon was on it. But Caitlin Clark was the only name on that list that was unanimous. So what I want to know, who didn't vote for Mackenzie Holmes in their top 10? Who thought that Mackenzie Holmes is the 11th best player in the Big Ten? We have so many voting problems, and we've talked about it with the WNBA and MVP and some of those awards, and now we're seeing it in college basketball again. So just show your face. Like, name me 10 players in this league better than Mackenzie Holmes. It's
Agreed.
I could probably make this whole pot a soapbox, but I just needed to get that in there. And the same thing with Cody McMahon. Same thing with some of these other players. Next one I'm going to talk about. There's no way that Caitlin Clark should have been the only unanimous name on this list. She probably should have been at least 4, maybe 5.
Oh, yeah.
So
and
it's I don't understand it. But
I will step on his soapbox for a little bit, and it's just, once again, personal. To the media, how is Mara Braun not on first team, but the coaches got her on first team? And this is, once again, nothing against her. McKenna Marisa went 0-2 against her in the regular season last year. Just throwing it out there. McKenna Marisa didn't beat Mara Braun in the regular season, which the awards are based on. I just think you got to beat 3 freshmen before you can be ahead of them in awards. Just my solid opinion.
Well, the timer hit, I think, 7 minutes if I have my clock down before you got to Minnesota. So you made it pretty long, Eric. That was
my only beef.
Great job on your part.
The coaches got it right. There was an 11th player there who should have been on there, who I think is one of the best 11 players, notably after. But that was my only beef. I was like, don't you kind of have to beat someone before you get ahead of them in awards? But personally. So I'll jump off the soapbox now and let Calvin see who else he talks about for Player of the Year.
Yeah, well, I had one other. I don't know if dark horse is the word. Obviously, again, she's not Caitlin Clark, so she's not going to win it. But she is the only other player in the country besides Caitlin Clark to hit 200 threes and have 75 assists last year, and that is Jazz Shelley. Also came back for year 5 at Nebraska. Doesn't get talked about nearly enough, in my opinion. Elite combo guard. Obviously can shoot the 3, but also when Sam Hybe went down, when they had some of those injuries late, ran the point to the point where, so I was working on my list for the Ann Myers Drysdale top 20 watch list for the shooting guard award, and I was looking at last year, and Jazz Shelley was on it, and my first thought was I kind of viewed Jazz Shelley as more of a point guard because she took over that role so late, but she's just so convincing in her passing ability. That even as a shooting guard, and she was on the shooting guard award list again this year that came out a couple days ago, but she's just so well-rounded as a guard in this league, and someone who obviously came back for a reason, has something to prove. I think Nebraska took some tough close losses last year that ended up making their record probably not reflect how good they really were, and of course a lot of injuries as well played into that. So something that I think she's looking to get that team to the next level and into the tournament this year, and I'm really excited to watch her play.
The other 2 dark horse names that I had down were Felia at Michigan and Cheyenne Sellers at Maryland. I just don't know, Cheyenne Sellers is going to have to take that Diamond Miller-like level for this team to be kind of an elite level, successful to get to the top 10. So what if she does, we've seen she can hit big shots. We've seen she can do big moments. Michigan is one where I'm like, I don't know if they're going to make the top 5. You lose 2 really big pieces in Leah Brown and Emily Kaiser. Don't get me wrong, Felia's good, but I just don't know if it's curious to see if she can be that number 1, top 2 go-to for her team. And if she can, that's maybe a dark horse. As we said, if your name is not Caitlin Clark, y'all fighting for second. Sorry, maybe hopefully she leaves after this year and you have a chance next year, but it's Caitlin Clark's lit world, and we are all just living in it. If you can maybe hold her below a triple-double, then you have an argument to say you have stopped her. Maybe.
Yeah, that's basically the Player of the Year analysis, full stop.
And let's go then to we'll give some other shine. How about, who are players that you have poised for a breakout this year?
Yeah, well, to start, I'll just mention her real quick, even though we kind of already talked about her, and I don't know if this even counts, because Cody McMahon sort of already broke out, but I think she's going to break out significantly more than what she already did. We kind of saw her really come on towards the end of her freshman year, got her, got her feet wet in the college game. I think she's got literally an All-American ceiling, and we could see that as soon as this year. Maybe we don't see it for a year or two. But in terms of sort of those deeper breakouts that maybe aren't, because Cody McMahon's kind of on the radar already. I would talk about Iowa's got a pair of bigs, Hannah Stolke and Addison O'Grady. Stolke was a top 50 recruit, came in last year as a freshman, obviously played behind Monica Sonano. And, when you get to run with Caitlin Clark, you're going to get some pretty open looks on pick and rolls and things like that. Addison O'Grady had 14 rebounds in 19 minutes the other day in that outdoor game you mentioned against DePaul. It's DePaul, so stats are going to be kind of inflated. It's one exhibition game, who knows? But she looked pretty solid on that end, at least. This isn't really a deep team. Like we said, they didn't add any transfers, lost a couple starters in Sonano and Warnock. So these two are going to get their chances for sure. They're going to get a lot of opportunities, and we'll see. At least one of them, I think, is going to really come on strong, and I would probably lean towards Stolke if I had to pick one. But definitely open some eyes. And then the last name I had here that I'll throw out is Dee Dee Hageman at Michigan State. They lost their two highest scores. Obviously, going to be a new system, new coach. And Robin Fralick coming over from Bowling Green. She did bring Jocelyn Tate over with her from Bowling Green. Got Lauren Ross as a transfer who averaged 22 points per game at Western Michigan. So definitely going to have some new scores around her. But I still think Dee Dee Hageman is going to sort of be asked to take on more of a scoring load than she was in the past. Obviously, she can dish it. So that's someone who I'd look to as well to sort of take a leap this year.
I agree with you on Stolke. I had her name down mostly because I think she's going to take over that pick and roll game with Caitlin, and she's a little bit quicker. I think we saw kind of in that outdoor game, it's hard with the preseason, but she was doing more of the backdoor cut stuff that Caitlin kind of likes to catch you on. She seems a little more quicker foot. That's why I'm like, Stolke's kind of, she may be what that Monica was with that kind of pick and roll. Caitlin looking to catch you, run out a little bit. Where Addison O'Grady, she's not yet up to the Monica foot speed, and that's where Caitlin kind of loved to, they could do like quick hits to the basket type situation where Stolke does have that foot speed. So I agree with you on Stolke. I have one, and I will take off my unbiased hat here and put on my biased hat. Mallory Heyer is coming for y'all, Big Ten. Mallory Heyer is ready to be the Robin to the Batwoman named the Brown Mamba. Mallory Heyer, I think, mostly because last year she was kind of figuring it out. Those freshmen were thrown to the fire and figuring it out. Now they never actually ran a play for her. I don't think I could look at one part of any game where they ran a play for Mallory Heyer. They should have multiple times, but they didn't. And so running plays now for her, getting her second year. She's stronger, she's quicker. Her three-point shot, we know she's now a three-point shooter. She's going to work on getting it off quicker. She's going to be able to attack more of the pick and roll game, of two-man game with her and Mara if they're both shooters, both rollers, both can get to the basket. I think Mallory Heyer is prepared to be a top 15. I'm talking like maybe could be second team all Big Ten at the end of the year. That type of level is what I'm expecting a jump from Mallory Heyer because she's a tank. She has relentless energy. She just gives you want a Mallory Heyer on your team when you're successful.
Yeah, well, and I think that, the reason I had Cody McMahon and Hannah Stolke on my list too, I just think sophomore year is the biggest year in general, not for everyone always, but more often than not, sophomore year is when college athletes take a huge leap, the biggest jump in their career after obviously there's a learning curve coming in from high school. And usually you're playing behind some juniors and seniors, and by the time you get to your sophomore year, you're sort of more ready to go. So that's there's another one for you.
So we'll get to teams now. Kelvin, you got any surprise teams that are going to maybe shock some people, maybe catch a few people sleeping on them a little bit too much?
So it was tough for me because I actually feel like when you look at the preseason rankings and polls and everything like that it's relatively accurate. I don't know if I see anything that's crazy far off. I did write down Illinois here, even though they are in the preseason AP poll, so it's not like they're exactly sneaking up on anyone. They were really last year's surprise team in Shauna Green's first year, so it's kind of cheating to call them that this year. But I think they're going to take another step. I think they're going to be even better than they were last year. Last year, made the tournament in Shauna Green's first year after basically 2 decades of doing absolutely nothing. But they kind of snuck into the tournament. They faltered a little bit end of season, ended up being in that first four in the first couple days of the tournament. And I think this year they are solidly in the tournament. I think that really if things go right for them, they have an outside shot to host that top 16. I'd probably think more likely they're end up going to be around the 6 or 7 line. But definitely a team that is going to really compete with some of the big dogs in the Big Ten. They got basically their whole rotation back. They added Camille Hobby coming over from NC State. Now they all have a year, 2 under their belts in Shauna Green's system. Whereas, last year they brought in some transfers or sort of new pieces, and they hit the ground running, which was really impressive, considering that they, usually it takes teams time to sort of put the pieces together and gel. But they have one whole year of that now. So don't be surprised if they even might snag a top 4 seed in that Big Ten tournament.
I think you're right. I think they could be 4 or 5 because you add Shea Bolin from Duke, who's more size now. They were always pretty small. And that was kind of like Dahlia McKenzie at your 3, and Adalia's at best a 2 because she's 5'9"-ish, I think. I remember from her high school days. And you're adding a Dolan from New York, the freshman, who's an outstanding scorer, brings that New York basketball swag. They have depth now. Last year they kind of ran with their 5. It kind of got a little bit wild if it went below the 5. This year you can go a solid 8, and if you can keep that energy, that defensive intensity, like you said, second year under Shauna Green, everything's a little more smooth. There's not kind of still figuring a lot of stuff out. I like that pick. The only other team I had down was, I said Purdue, and I just had experience. They bring back a lot of experience, and Katie Gerald just somehow seems to, she flips a switch at some point in the Big Ten where they get wins that you wouldn't think Purdue would get. They play that defense that she just really hound people down. I think Purdue could surprise people and maybe knock off a couple of those top 5 teams. I won't go as far to say they're going to be like, they probably are a fringe Big Ten or NCAA tournament team, but I think experience goes a long way, and Katie Gerald's is one of them that, like, she knows this league. She's bringing energy. She's recruiting. They have some transfers in, like, from Maryland and stuff. I think they have a nice, solid core that they can build off of.
Yeah, I like that. Purdue is always one of those teams that sort of feels like, I think they were fringe last year as well. If I remember correctly, were they in the first 4 as well against St. John's?
Correct, they were.
Or maybe, yeah, so there you go.
Any teams that you think could take a slide back?
Yeah. Well, is it fair to say Iowa? Because Iowa's going to be very good, obviously. This is not me sitting here and trying to say that Iowa's going to somehow be like the 7th best team in the Big Ten and be on the bubble or anything crazy. But, they finished in a national championship game. They're ranked 3rd in the AP preseason poll. Like, everyone expects this team to be a championship contender, a Final Four, at worst type of team. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure. They obviously, Caitlin Clark can carry you anywhere you want to go on the right day. But at the same time, like we said, lost a couple starters, didn't bring in any transfers. Even if Hannah Stolke does surprise some people, I'm not fully convinced that they were really a top 2 team last year either. They made a national championship game, but they kind of had one historically good performance against South Carolina from everyone, from the coaching, the game plan, from the players. And, outside of that, I would have called them more like a top 10 team, maybe top 5 on their good days. But I don't see them really being at the same level as like an LSU and a UConn this year. So I think, and again, I'm kind of like reaching because I think that the Big Ten is fairly appropriately ranked right now, which isn't, I was actually surprised by that because usually you see when you see these preseason rankings in any league and across the country, you see some pretty big flaws and some teams that you feel like are very inappropriately ranked, too high or too low. Fair. But I think they actually did a good job this year. So this isn't like, I'm kind of reaching for a pick here, but I have to go with Iowa.
I don't agree with some of the people that say that they're like Iowa's a fringe top 5 in the Big Ten. Like, they're clearly, I'd say, top 3. Like, it would take...
Yeah, I would not go that far either.
Right. My thing is, I think what they lost in the 2 starters, especially Warnock, is 3-point shooting. That Stolke and Addison O'Grady don't bring you 3-point shooting. And that was kind of, you had... Exactly. That's why Monica could kind of bury players because you had 4 shooters around her. No, another thing we talked about is there are other Kate and Gabby. They're good shooters, but they have every year they kind of seem like they have times where they're cold, and that's when you go to the Caitlin and Monica thing. They'd get you through those cold games, those cold stretches. Monica's not there anymore. If you don't have 3-point shooting, it puts a lot on Caitlin. And there are good defenders, there are good teams that can really hone in on her as much as you can rein in Caitlin Clark, but she's going to need help. Gabby's going to have to hit her open threes. Kate Martin's going to have to be, I would say, a consistent 3-point shooter. We've seen games where she can hit 6 against UConn, and then in tight games, she's missing them against Maryland, against Illinois, because they're giving her open, and then they need them, and then those shots get a little tighter, a little harder. So that's kind of where I could see them slide out of the first spot. The other team I already mentioned a little bit, Michigan to me. You lost 2 big key pieces in experience, in scoring, in rebounding from Kaiser. Those are hard to replace. Now they have great players coming in. They have some great freshmen coming in the 24 class next year. I just don't know this year if they have enough to fight those big 5. When Illinois is deeper, we have the fighting Caitlin Clarks. Indiana's still deep. You got Ohio State got even deeper when they added another defensive guard in Celeste Taylor. It's a hard Big Ten to break into that top 5.
Yeah, no question. And anytime you lose someone, like Leah Brown, especially, it's tough to replace. Back to your point on Iowa, I think I'm fully with you that top 3 for sure. I wouldn't say this team is going to be playing on day 1 or even day 2 of the Big Ten tournament, but I think from what I see, it just feels like a lot of people are, this is the Big Ten championship runs through Iowa, and in the same way that the player of the year is Caitlin Clark, the championship is Iowa. I don't think that's true. I think Ohio State and Indiana are going to have a lot to say about that. And I could easily see Iowa finishing 3rd in this league. So as opposed to where they are right now, 3rd in the country. So that's really all it is. But yeah, I'm with you.
The other thing is with that is O'Grady and Hannah are going to have to defend the likes of a Mackenzie Holmes, of a Cody McMahon. Are they ready to take on that? Because Monica took on those, and Monica could go head-to-head when it came to Kenzie Holmes. Is she ready for that? Are they ready for that on both sides of the ball? Not even just the offensive.
No one's ready for Mackenzie Holmes. No one.
Fair.
No one in this league who can defend her.
Man, we need to get him a Holmes jersey. Or a shirt or something. Come on now.
Hey, if anyone out there wants to send me one, I'll wear it.
Trust me, I'm sending him an MVP jersey. That's for another podcast. So
you've been saying that, Eric. I'm waiting on that coming.
Look, she was number 4 this year. We'll get to wait till she's top 2. It's coming.
All right.
We will now go. We'll hold off on the bold. Any conference, non-conference big matchups in the Big Ten you think are must see?
Oh, so many. I have a long list, and it's not even close to all-encompassing. We're going to start with Iowa, Virginia Tech. A couple Final Four teams. A Final Four matchup that we didn't get to see because Virginia Tech blew that lead. To me, you talk about 2 great teams, but specifically Georgia Amore versus Caitlin Clark. Fireworks. Yes. Sign me up. Indiana versus Stanford. Couple 1 seeds who are going to be playing with a chip on their shoulder. Neither of them made the Sweet 16. I remember correctly, first time ever, 2 1 seeds didn't make the Sweet 16. I might be wrong about that.
Yeah, true.
Maryland versus South Carolina. We've seen this matchup 3 times in the last 2 years, and South Carolina's dominated, but South Carolina's takes a step back. So this might be Maryland's chance. Maryland also gets to play UConn and Washington State, who's going to be pretty good. So Shine Sellers versus Charlie Sledger-Walker. Give me some of that. Indiana, Ohio State, both played Tennessee again. They both played last year. Both beat Tennessee, if I remember correctly.
Handily.
And that was Tennessee came in preseason top 5, and I think Indiana and Ohio State woke some people up in those matchups. So this year, I think people are going to be ready for. I think Indiana and Ohio State will beat them again, but we get to see Destiny Wells on Tennessee going up against Big Ten competition. Jewel Spear, yeah. Tennessee brought in some good pieces, so I'm looking forward to that. Illinois versus Notre Dame is another one I'm looking at. Last year. When I had Sean, her Hoops Stats podcast, we talked to Shauna Green and asked her, when was it that she knew that her team was going to outperform expectations as much as they were, that they were going to be ready. Sometimes new coaches come into a program, the state of which Illinois was in, and sort of take a few years to kind of rebuild it, and she did it in 1 year. And she said the point when she knew that was going to happen was before the official season even started. They had a closed-door scrimmage against Notre Dame, and they really competed with them, obviously, with Olivia Miles and Sonia Citron and all those stars that Notre Dame has. And that's when she knew. So now they get to face him. I don't know if we're going to get to see Olivia Miles in that game, but now they get to face him in a real game on TV out in Washington, D.C., the Shamrock Classic or whatever it's called.
Yep.
Again, excellent matchup. Can't wait. And then the last couple ones I've written down here, some in-state rivalries that always seem to deliver. The Iowa games, every game between two teams in the state of Iowa, I don't care who it is.
Right.
Those four teams, Iowa State, when we're talking about the Big Ten, obviously Iowa versus any of those other three teams, but they all deliver always, every time. I don't care. And Nebraska versus Creighton, too. That's two really good basketball teams, another in-state rivalry that I can't wait to watch. So tune into the in-state ones as well. I probably went too long with there. I'm just so excited. This is me getting fully in college basketball mode, ready to go.
You're only missing one of them that I have.
All right, hit me. Give it to me.
UConn's coming home to the barn. Paige is coming home to the barn this year.
I left that one for you on purpose, Eric. I knew that was going to be yours.
And here's what I will say. I'm not delusional yet enough to say that the Gophers are going to have any chance in this game. I will say this. If they can show, they should be 3-0 leading up to that. They should be 3-0. I'm saying that, knock on wood. This is a game where I think you can maybe show where you're different from last year. Show that you can maybe be competitive. Be within 10 in the third quarter. Have a run where you maybe have to force UConn to do a timeout. And the one thing I always tell people is, I don't know if there's a backcourt in the country that knows Paige Beckers better than Mara Braun and Amaya Battle. Amaya Battle was her backcourt mate for 3 years starting at Hopkins. She learned under her. She learned from her day in and day out of practice. Mara Braun went against her for 3 years at Wayzata High School, and she put up 32 when Paige was a senior, on Paige being her main defender. They know her game better than I think any other backcourt. I'm not saying that's going to help them much, but I'm saying they're not going to come into this and be like a lot of teams, oh, this is Paige Beckers. Amaya knows her as Paige Beckers. Mara knows her as Paige Beckers. I think the Gophers aren't going to be as maybe nervous as some teams are when UConn comes into your house. And that barn is going to be packed.
Yeah, definitely. That's a game where you got to get everybody to show up to the barn.
We're already sold out.
Whatever happens in the game. Are you? Great. Good.
UConn and Iowa tickets are sold out for Gophers this year.
As they should be. Let's go. I love it.
So that's the only one I have because I'm not saying it's going to be competitive. I would love it to be competitive. I just think I'm excited to see that backcourt chess match of Mara and Amaya going against Paige. Because they know her game.
It's fantastic. So I looked at that one too, and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to write this one down because Eric's going to.
It's the only non-conference game that we have. We can be like, woo. So you knew I was going to take it. So now we'll get to my favorite part, only because I liked putting Calvin on the spot. Any bold predictions for this player, team, anything Big Ten women's basketball related? Bold predictions.
Yeah, this is another one I struggle with a little bit because, like I said, I feel like this year more so than in past years, these teams are rated somewhat in the neighborhood of where they should be. But that being said, you'll tell me if this is bold enough. Ohio State is going to make the Final Four, and if that's not bold enough, I'll go as far to say that I think they might win a national championship. Everyone's talking about LSU and UConn. To me, I actually think Ohio State should be the favorite in the Big Ten over Iowa right now. But you add Celeste Taylor to that press, perfect fit for that nasty press. Bring J.C. Sheldon back. Again, hopefully we get a full healthy year out of her. And Cody McMahon, who we've already talked quite a bit about on this podcast. Remember last year they were undefeated for a long time. They got up to number 2 or number 3 in the country before they dropped a few games.
Yep.
Faltered a bit and then finished strong again, knocked off UConn, ended their Final Four streak of 50 years or whatever it was. So this team has a lot going for it right now, and I think they're going to really, really be a tough out in March.
This is why I feel vindicated when Calvin agrees with me on stuff, because I have 2 of them. My team one is Ohio State's going to win the conference and make a Final Four. That's my team. There we go. One. This is kind of a team, kind of a player one. I mixed it together. I say that Mara Braun is going to be a top 5 scorer in the conference. And the Gophers are going to knock off one of the top 25 or top 5 teams in the conference in a game this year.
Okay.
I'm not bold enough to say who it is, but I think they're going to knock off one of the top 5.
All right. All right.
Those are my bold predictions. But Ohio State, I'm with you. I don't know if you've ever seen Ohio State in person. At the Big Ten tournament, when I really felt it, that press is psychotic. Like, that's the best way to describe it. It just comes out of nowhere, and it's like your team is all of a sudden falling apart, and they're everywhere. JC Sheldon plays like she's like Brittany Griner's size. That's how she is in that post. And I'm like, you can't get the ball around her, and then they're getting steals, and then they're ramming it down your throat. Here comes Cody. And before you know it, you're like, that was a 20-2 run. What just happened? So
it is. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. I mean, when it's on and when they're healthy and when it's clicking, it's one of the best presses I've ever seen, like without question. And it's one of those presses where if I'm a coach and I'm preparing for it, I'm putting, like, my scout team has 6 people on it this week, and we're running against 6 people to try to prepare for that, because that's what it feels like. It feels like you're playing against 6
or 8. I mean, when they played Indiana last year in the Big Ten tournament, I was sitting behind an Indiana fan, and at one point she just turned to her husband and she's like, "What just happened?" And I'm like, that's how their press feels. We have it just hits you like a freight train. And then you're sped up, and then you're taking rush shots, or we're doing bad passes, and I'm JC Sheldon, but she's the engine to that. Because when she was out, they didn't have that same vigor in their press. It wasn't the same, like, freneticness. But I'm telling you, JC Sheldon, I want her measured because I think she's 6'9". Because she's everywhere on the court, and it's extremely impressive.
Yeah, I can't wait to see her, knock on wood here, a healthy season from her.
So now my other favorite part is we going to do... He's the betting man. I'm not betting, so I'm not doing the over and under because I always make him sound bad. So Calvin judges on that. But we're going to do quick hits. We're going to do Calvin's quick hits. So
all right,
here we go. Which new coach will have a Shauna Green-like effect, Minnesota or Michigan State?
In terms of that level of success in year one, neither, but...
Fair.
Who's going to be more successful, I think, would be Minnesota, would be Donnie P. Minnesota. Yeah. And I'm not just saying that because I'm on a pod with a Minnesota person here. I just think Michigan State is, Dawn is inheriting a really, really good sophomore class, obviously. And in Michigan State, she's got some pieces for sure that we talked about, but I think it's going to take them a little bit longer, Robin Freilich, to kind of get her feet under her there. I don't think Dawn Plitzowite's going to all of a sudden vault Minnesota into the top 25 in like 2 months like what Shauna Green did. But if I'm picking between those two, I'm going Minnesota.
Fair. Now, I want a bold question for him. Do you think the Gophers have the most talented as a whole sophomore class? Yes or no? Because Cody's on her own.
In the conference?
In the conference. Cody's kind of on her own. Stalky's on her own. As a whole class, do the Gophers have the most talented sophomore class? Yes or no?
It's a good question. I got to think through it. These are the questions that Eric put me on the spot on. I had all these other ones ready to go. So give me a minute. I'm thinking through who all is a sophomore in this league. I'm off the top of my head, I can't think of any. Every really talented sophomore that I can think of in this league right now off the top of my head is on a different team. You're talking about, like you said, isolated players. Cody McMahon over here. I'm thinking of
Yarden.
Yarden. Yep. Kayleen Smeichel and Rutgers. Probably not in that same category as those two, but I'm not sure if I'm thinking of any other class that has that deep of a sophomore class. So in terms of depth, I think, off the top of my head, I would say yes.
I was hoping you'd say that. It's true. The only one I could think maybe Nebraska, when you have your post and you have Cal and Hake kind of both coming in for sophomore year, they can maybe take those jumps. But I think a big three.
Yeah, well, with Nebraska, I would be interested. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good.
To see how Maggie Mendelson does, because obviously coming off of volleyball, and last year she looked good in flashes, but she's, I don't think we've seen her peak yet.
Fair.
And we'll see if we get it this year or not. But that's sort of what that comes down to for me with their sophomore class.
Over under 10 triple doubles from Clark this year.
I'm gonna say under, which is a dangerous thing to do. 10 is a lot, though.
She did one outdoors in a football field with the wind.
She did. That is, that is something else. I, I need to look this up. Did Sabrina ever have 10 in a year? Because I think she finished with like
She had
26
9 her senior year. I know
her
that.
career,
She had 9
or
her
9 her
senior.
senior year. So I'm not even positive that Sabrina, who has like double the amount of triple doubles as anyone else on men's or women's college basketball history, I'm not even positive that she had 10 in a year. She might have, but 10 in one season is a lot. If anyone could do it, it could be Caitlin Clark. But I got to take that under.
Fair. Over under 8 Big Ten teams make the big dance.
Over under. That feels about right. You got to give me like 7.5 or 8.5 here. I feel okay. So we're talking
Seven and a
about,
half. We'll go seven and a
we're
half.
gonna say 7.5. All right. So um let's just name them in my head here. I think you're talking about the big three: Iowa, Ohio State, Indiana, and you're talking about Michigan and Maryland. Take a step back or not, they're in the big turn, the big dance. That's five. Illinois, six. Nebraska, I think, is going to make it this year. That's seven. I don't know. I'm not sure if we
Gotta
see
justify like a Purdue, a Minnesota,
anyone
Michigan
else.
State.
Yeah, Purdue could maybe. Like you said, that's a borderline. They could be a bubble team again, like they were last year. Um, I'm gonna say over because I think the seven that I said are gonna get in, and then you got a group of teams that maybe could get on the bubble, and maybe you get one of those other teams in.
Fair.
So I'm gonna say they're gonna get eight. I don't know who that eighth is gonna be.
True or false? Someone other than Caitlin Clark will lead the league in scoring.
False.
False. Man, I was hoping you were going to
100%
hump up.
false.
I was hoping you were going to like hype up Holmes. Come on now.
No, listen, Mackenzie Holmes is elite. She's the best post scorer, like I said. But you're gonna have to be pushing 30 to touch Caitlin Clark, and
Fair.
I think Mackenzie Holmes is gonna be more in that 22 to 25 range, which is great, which is about as good as you're gonna see from a player of a player who doesn't shoot threes. Really, if she adds a three to her game, then good for her. I'll change my mind. But false. Caitlin Clark's gonna lead the league in scoring.
This one is maybe a spicy one. Are there any coaches that you feel in the Big Ten are currently on the hot seat this coming season?
I would say, yeah, you got to look at Wisconsin. Obviously, Mosley is going to be in her third year, so usually you get longer than that. I think in college sports, usually you get 4 or 5 years, but at the same time, in this new era of sort of transfer movement, and it's like what we saw with Shauna Green, it's not easy to turn a team around in 1 year, but it's a little bit less hard than it used to be to turn teams around earlier. It used to really take maybe a full 4 years to turn a team completely around and turn a program around. It doesn't really always take that long anymore because not only the transfer movement that we have, but also, the rule, the one-time thing. You can get kids come in and play right away. So would they let her go after 3 years? I don't know. They might. That's the first name that comes to my mind.
It's Wisconsin. It could. I think I said last year, because to me, before last year, Illinois and Wisconsin kind of always been kind of in that bottom four of the Big Ten. They went through kind of coaches that no one could ever come to see to get it rolling. But I think it put more of a spotlight on that it can be done when Shauna Green did it like that. I think when you look at Marissa and people are like, well, they're doing the slow build. I'm like, but Illinois didn't do the slow build, and Illinois maybe was even further behind where Wisconsin was. So it's like, do you want to do the slow build, especially when Wisconsin, when volleyball and hockey for women's sports are thriving? You know that the low area will support women's sports. You want to put a show on that's maybe going to get them in the seats for your game as well as when they're packing volleyball and whatnot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I will say to her credit, I think Wisconsin in the last month or so of the regular season last year took a step forward. It's not like they became one of the best teams in the Big Ten all of a sudden or anything, but I think they did have fairly good finish to the season. And who knows, maybe they build on that. You'll give her a chance. But if they don't show any growth this year, I think the writing might be on the wall.
The only other one I had, but I don't know if it's a hot seat or more so passing the torch, is possibly a Northwestern. Joe McCune, I don't know how long he wants to keep going and what the story is there, kind of anything. But that's the only one I could see is a new coach situation on it. way in the next year or two.
Yeah, that does feel more like a passing the torch than a hot seat. Not that Northwestern has been particularly great in the last year or two, really, ever since they lost Veronica Burton. They were about 4 or 5 years ago incredible. Obviously, they would have hosted a tournament game if not for COVID. But yeah, I wouldn't call that one a hot seat one. But like you said, yeah, who knows? He might retire at any time. So in terms of new coaches, that's one you could put on the list.
I think Kelvin has a certain coach that he's a fan of. If you can look at his background, that he would love to see in the Big Ten someday.
Yeah, she's an elite candidate for any of these jobs. So
Shout
give
out.
her a call. Yep,
Fair. I'll take it.
definitely.
And now I got to do it. My own personal bias coming out. I got to ask, how many, I should say I have it written down. Over under, Kelvin's going to watch the Gophers 5 times this year. Over or under 5?
5 full games?
5 full games.
So, okay, because here's the thing. So here's how I watch basketball, like 80% of the time, is that I have like 4 different screens going, and then there's like one game that's the most important. With Illinois State, I'm locked in. Okay. With anyone else, and obviously if it's like a huge game, like I'm going to be locked in to some of those big, like Iowa, Virginia Tech, I'll be locked in. But for most other games, I got like 4 games going, whatever game's the best, volume on that one, mute the other ones, go back and forth. I will absolutely have Minnesota basketball on one of my screens more than 5 times this year. Will I be locked in and have the volume on for the whole game 5 times? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see.
Fair.
We'll see how they do.
Well, trust me, he's just only having it on because if I text him, he'll be like, what does this text mean if I'm randomly ranting during a game? So he will absolutely know what I'm talking about if I'm ranting during a Gopher game. He'll be like, oh, it's on the screen 3. I'll figure it out.
For sure, for sure. By the way, we should go back real quick. I should have said this to Kristen Gillespie, Illinois State. I take back what I said. Don't call her for any jobs because we want her to stay at Illinois State. So I don't know why I said that. That just like what was the instinctual thing to say. But
Fair.
I changed my mind on that one. I needed to get that in there.
He doesn't want you to call. You can call, but she won't call you back.
We want to keep her around here. She, elite coach though. Nothing but respect for her.
She's one of my favorites that I've talked to, and I've only talked to a few of them, but hey, she's one of my favorites.
Yeah,
Most coaches avoid
no
me
doubt.
because, let's be honest, like they're like, he's the Gopher fan. I'm like, accurate. Well, Calvin, we have a very exciting Big Ten season coming up. One last thing I want to ask. I didn't have it on our list, but let's see how well he does on his feet. I'm guessing he does great. Any big-time transfers into the conference that you have your eye on?
Yeah, we talked about Celeste Taylor a little bit. I think that's a big one. One that I haven't mentioned is Darian White coming into Nebraska from. That's a little bit of an under the radar one from Montana State, but I really loved her at Montana State, so I think that's gonna be a good one. We talked about Camille Hobby from Illinois. I don't know if this league has as deep and as talented of a transfer class as they did in the last year or two, but there are definitely still some out there that are gonna make some noise.
The only one I'll add is Owusu is back in the Big Ten at Penn State.
Yeah, that one is a huge wild card to me.
Let's see how this goes. I'm curious to see. I don't think her teammates will have Twitter wars with her like they did last year, but I'm all for it if they do. Last year was super entertaining, so I will take it any way we can get entertainment.
Eric's definitely grabbing his popcorn over here.
100%. As long as they're losing to the Gophers, have off-court issues. I could care less. Keep losing to the Gophers. They did last year twice, so hopefully 2 more times. But, Calvin, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure. I cannot say thank you enough for taking your time, dealing with my Gopher bias, and giving us all your insights. One more time, if anyone wants to hear this podcast, hear your many other podcasts, where can everyone find you besides an Illinois State women's volleyball, women's basketball, men's basketball game?
Yeah, you can find me. That's if you want to find me in person, that's where you got to go. If you want to find me online, you can go to Twitter or any Instagram, whatever. C Wetzel. It's like pretzel with a W. 31. That's my handle on everything.
I like it. And where can they find your work online? What other podcasts? I'll give you a chance to hype them up.
Yeah, her hoop stats. Have a podcast with Karina Mustafa, who is phenomenal. So go listen to that. And then I sometimes jump on CBS Sports HQ, break down some WNBA stuff. See, hopefully get on there for college. We'll see. But you can go check that out. And Yeah, I don't know. I've had Missouri Valley Media Day. I knew I had something else I was trying to think. This coming Tuesday, I don't know when you're releasing this, but this coming Tuesday, Missouri Valley Women's Basketball Media Day. I'll be there, be live streaming some interviews with players and coaches, so something you can go check out as well. If you're into the mid-major scene, Missouri Valley, that'll be fun.
If you listen to my other podcast, Three Stooges of Basketball, Mason and Brady love the mid-majors. I pretty much stick to complaining about LSU and talking about the Gophers. So that's for Calvin probably does a little more professional work. So that's all that is. But once again,
At least when the camera's rolling, as soon as we turn it off, all bets are off.
correct. But once again, thank you, thank you, thank you. You are the best. Once again, paraphrasing Kevin Durant, you the real MVP for putting up with me for this. But every year, we might do like a mid one. We did a freshman one last year mid-season. Maybe we'll do like an end of season one to see how all of our predictions did. I tend to do okay on predictions in the WNBA, but college I'm usually terrible at. So we'll see how this goes.
Yeah, well, you nailed the finals that one year when it was the 5th seed versus the 6th seed, so you can always ride that.
Oh, 100%. I'm never letting that video drop, ever. Once again, thank you so much. You have a great one.
All right. Yeah, you too, Eric. Thanks for having me.